He said it without a flinch. I found someone who listens, Thomas told me, standing in our kitchen like he'd just set down the mail. His voice was flat, almost bored, like the weather. I was holding a wooden spoon over a pot of chili, and the words splashed through me louder than the simmer. He didn't blink. He just watched my face, waiting for that small crack he could climb through. I put the spoon down. What does that mean? I asked, because sometimes you give people a chance to walk back from the cliff. It means I'm tired of repeating myself, he said, tugging at the cuff of his shirt. About the bills. About the house. About your habit of letting money sit in accounts that earn nothing. She gets it. She thinks like I do. He added the last part like a prize ribbon. She thinks like I do, as if that should make me applaud. There was the betrayal, wrapped in a plain sentence. Not a fight. Not a tear. Just a verdict. He moved on to the greedy motive like it was the next bullet point. Listen, we need to be smart with what your mom left you, he said, lowering his voice, as if the chili might tell on him. The market is moving. Lucas has a short window on the distribution center deal. If we move fast, we can roll your inheritance into the investment and triple it in a year. But it has to be in my name. The partners want clean lines. We can put you as beneficiary on the back end. My inheritance, I repeated. From my mother. The money she saved in a coffee can and a little account for 20 years while she cleaned houses and then drove a school bus. That money. He smiled like a teacher correcting a child. Money is money, Jenna. Sitting in your safe like it's a museum exhibit isn't helping anybody. I never said it was staying forever, I said softly. I said we would plan. Together. Together doesn't work, he said. Not when you stall. You need a decision maker. I am one. Lucas says if we wire by Friday, we're in. If we wait, we're out. He was almost gentle. It made it worse. He'd softened the sound to make the blow land clean. I wiped my hands on a towel I didn't remember buying. It had little lemons across the border. I thought about how many small things make a life. Towels, grocery lists, the way a person laughs when they're tired, and how fast a single sentence can sweep them off the counter. Who is she? I asked. Don't do that, he said. It's not about her. Then why start with her? He ran a palm over his jaw. He had started shaving at night again, a detail I'd noticed and ignored. Because she listens, he repeated, and then his voice sharpened. Which is more than I can say for you. I walked to the sink and rinsed the spoon, just to keep my hands busy. I'm listening now, I said. Good, he said, and he stepped closer like we were in a business meeting. Open the safe. I'll log into the bank. We transfer the certificates to my account, and I'll route them to the LLC. You can do the simple part, sign the limited partner paperwork. I turned off the stove. The kitchen quieted. I'm not transferring anything to your account, I said. If there's an investment, we do it properly, in writing, with an attorney who doesn't play poker with you. And after I meet your partners. He looked at me the way a man looks at a puzzle missing a piece. This is why I'm exhausted, he said. You drag your feet. You don't understand timelines. His phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at it and smiled, small, involuntary. We're done here, he said, scooping the phone up. I'm meeting Lucas. Sleep on it if you must. But by Friday we wire. When he left, the house sighed. I didn't cry. I ladled the chili into 2 glass containers and labeled them like I always do, Tuesday, Wednesday. Then I took the key from the hook behind the pantry broom and opened the small safe in the hall closet. The envelope with my mother's handwriting sat on top of the documents. For Jenna, for later, she had written, the loops of her J and F careful and slow. I touched the paper with 2 fingers like a blessing and closed the door again. Here is the twist, and it came from the smallest mistake. At 9 that night, my phone lit up with an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail because I was tired of friendly strangers selling me energy plans. The transcript popped up a minute later. Hi Thomas, it's me. I'm still at the office. I know you're with her, but I wanted to say I'm proud of you. We're so close. Once the wire hits, Lucas will draft the separation papers like we discussed. Don't worry about the house, he said. Moving title is easier than you think when there's a capacity clause. Call when you can. Love you. I pressed play. I listened to the voice once. Then twice. Young. Bright. Certain. The kind of voice that runs on coffee and applause. And at the end, there it was again, love you. She hadn't called him. She had called me. I sat very still on the couch with the phone in my hand like a stone. Separation papers. Capacity clause. Moving title. These were not words said by accident. These were tools. Somewhere, months before the lemons on the towel, he had sifted through my simple life and circled the places to pry. He had found a woman who also liked tools. I rewound the message and wrote the words down in the little spiral notebook I keep for grocery lists and passwords in my purse. I put the date and the time. Then I saved the voicemail to the cloud and forwarded it to my email because television has taught me at least 3 good habits, and one is making copies. I called my sister Mara, and she answered on the second ring. We don't talk every day, we talk when the seam splits. Say it, she said, because she knows the sound my breath makes when I'm holding a dam. Thomas said he found someone who listens, I told her. And then the someone called me by mistake. We sat together in silence for a beat that was not empty. What did she say? Mara asked. That she loves him, I said. And that once my money wires, the lawyer will draft separation papers. She mentioned moving the title to the house. She said capacity clause. Mara exhaled. Capacity clause? I think she means something like saying I'm not competent. Or old enough to need help. I tried to keep my voice even, but it shook once on the word help. You're 58, Mara said. You run the literacy program at the library. You fix your own sink trap. You're not anybody's capacity clause. Tell Thomas that, I said. Tell the lawyer that, she answered. And the bank. And a judge if you must. I don't want to blow up my life, I said. I want to keep the life I built. Then you plan, she said. You get ahead. You make a list so long it stretches across Friday and strangles it. We made the list together, the way we used to make our mother's Christmas lists on the back of church bulletins. I wrote, 1. Call bank, freeze any wires not authorized by me. 2. Pull statements. 3. Find Lucas' last name. 4. Check our phone records. 5. Photograph everything in the safe. 6. Find an attorney tomorrow morning. 7. Do not tell Thomas anything until I have paper in my hands. I slept little. When I did, my dreams were made of lines, the line at the bank, the line on the deed, the thin line a person walks between love and self-preservation. In the morning, I drove to the branch where the tellers know my face. I asked to speak to a manager and said the words that make bankers sit straighter. I need to place a hold on any outgoing wires from any account in my name unless I appear in person with ID. No exceptions. I kept my voice calm. Calm makes people move faster than panic sometimes. The manager, a woman with a small gold pin that said Anita, listened without interrupting. Do you have reason to believe someone might attempt to move funds without your consent? She asked. I do, I said. I also have reason to believe he's spoken with a man named Lucas about an investment, and that he may present himself as authorized to act on my behalf. We can put a note on the account and require an in-person check for any wires, she said. If you like, we can also add a password phrase for any phone calls. Yes, I said. Let's do that. I wrote the phrase on a little line, lemon towel. I smiled despite myself. When I finished, Anita lowered her voice to the place where professionals keep their care. We also have a fraud department for elder exploitation, she said. You're not elderly, but the same team can advise. Would you like their number? Yes, I said again, and took the card. When I got home, I pulled our wireless account online and clicked through the call logs. There she was, the unknown number from the voicemail, repeating every day at lunch and again at 10 at night. I scrolled back 6 months. She had been in the background of my life since spring. I clicked on the contact details and my stomach dropped. The number belonged to a law firm. Not a big glossy one of those smaller names in a corner suite, the kind that churns documents like butter. The extension showed L. Reeves. I had her name now. My phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. Dinner at 7? We should finish our talk. I typed back, not tonight. I've got a meeting. I didn't say with whom. At 9, I sat in a quiet office with a woman in a navy dress whose handshake was dry and firm. "I'm Rachel Pierce," she said. "Tell me from the top." I told her how he said he found someone who listens. I told her about the wire by Friday, the beneficiary on the back end, the separation papers mentioned by mistake, the phrase capacity clause, the house title. I handed her my notebook, and she read the list like a map. "You did the right things," she said. "The call logs. The bank hold. The saved voicemail. The only thing left is to not warn him. Let him try. When he does, we'll be ready. I'll draft a letter today warning Lucas, if we can identify him, and anyone else that any transfer without your written consent is fraud. If he files anything on the house, we'll see it in the recorder's index. If he pressures you, record it." "What about the woman?" I asked. "Elle Reeves. She's at a law firm." Rachel nodded, unsurprised. "Men who plan to move marital assets often find a cheering section with letterhead," she said. "Don't call her. If she called you by mistake once, she'll trip again." "Separation papers," I said quietly. "He's not even hiding it." "He thinks you'll freeze," Rachel said. "People who move like he moves count on other people being polite. You're going to be precise, not polite." I drove home with both hands on the wheel and both eyes on the road, repeating the word precise like a prayer. When I walked in, Thomas was at the counter with a glass of water and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked around the kitchen like a realtor. "Big day?" he asked. "Errands," I said. "Good," he said. "I talked to Lucas. He can meet tomorrow, but it has to be quick. He's flying to Dallas." "I can't tomorrow," I said. "I have a library board meeting." He smirked. "You and your little committees," he said, and he walked past me to the hall closet. He reached for the hook behind the broom without looking. His fingers closed around air. He glanced back, and I watched the first crack appear. "Where's the safe key?" "Safe," I said lightly, and watched him try to decide if he should pretend he heard a joke or a wall. He tried charm. "Jenna, we're on the same team." "Are we?" I asked. He set the glass down too hard. It clinked against the counter and wobbled. "Don't turn this into a fight," he said. "I'm trying to build something for us. I finally found a partner who wants to move." "A partner," I said. "Do partners usually call their partner's wife to confirm the plan?" He went still. It was small. If I hadn't been looking, I would have missed it. "What?" he said. "Nothing," I said, because Rachel had told me to let him show his hand. "Just talk." He talked. He talked for 20 minutes about timelines and windows and stepping stones. He used words like we and us until they sounded like music coming from a speaker with a tear in it, familiar but wrong. Then he checked his phone and smiled that small smile again. "I've got to take this," he said, and he stepped onto the porch. I stood in the kitchen and counted to 60. On 51, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go, and the voicemail rang through. I waited 1 minute, then pressed play. "Hey Thomas, it's me," the bright voice chirped. "Lucas says he'll have the POA draft ready if she drags her feet. He said the capacity language is easiest when a spouse has been on anti-anxiety meds, so dig for that if you can. Worst case, we file emergency to keep her from moving the money. I know this is scary, but after Friday, we're free. I'm at the office till 10. Love you." I sank into a chair. My hands were steady. My breath was not. I saved the voicemail. Then I forwarded it to Rachel with a subject line she had suggested earlier: unsolicited call, third party advises fraudulent POA. Thomas came back in, whistling like a man in a commercial. "Where were we?" he asked. I looked up at him and felt something hard settle in me, a stone I could stand on. "We were at Friday," I said. "The day you think is a deadline." He grinned. "Now you're getting it." "I am," I said. "And so are they." "Who?" he asked. "You'll see," I said. I stood, picked up the towel with the lemons, and hung it carefully on the oven bar like it mattered. It did. Small things matter when big things go rotten. He leaned back, easy again. "Sleep on it," he said. "Tomorrow's a big day." I nodded like a woman who had decided between two dresses. "It is," I said. When he went upstairs, I called Mara, then I texted Rachel one line, tomorrow 9 a.m., bank plus recorder's office plus notary registry. Then we decide where to make the first cut. She replied with a thumbs up and the address of a private notary she trusted. I washed the chili pot and set it to dry. I wiped the counters. I locked the safe and slid the key into a place only I know. Then I turned off the kitchen light and let the house go quiet around me, the way it does when it's listening for the next page. Because he said he found someone who listens. And then she called me by mistake and told me their whole plan. Keep watching, because on Friday, before any wire could move, I walked into a room with a recorder, a banker and a lawyer, and I didn't just say no. I pulled the first thread that would unspool the whole thing. When I woke the next morning, the house smelled like burnt toast. Thomas never cooked, not even when I was sick, so the scent made me uneasy. I found him at the counter, phone tucked under his chin, laughing softly. Yes, I'll see you before lunch, he said, his back to me. No, she's fine. She doesn't suspect a thing. I didn't need to hear more. I just stood there, my robe pulled close, listening to the man I'd shared my life with speak about me like a side project. When he noticed me, he hung up too fast and gave that bright boyish grin he uses when he's cornered. Morning, Ruth. Toast got away from me, he said, waving the blackened slice. Don't look so worried. Worried. I suppose that's one word for it. But what I felt was smaller and sharper, like the sound of glass cracking somewhere you can't see. He came close, brushed my shoulder, and dropped his voice. You were restless last night. Bad dreams. Just a long day, I said, even though neither of us believed it. He nodded, kissed my forehead, and whispered, let's keep today easy, huh? Then he left, the screen door closing behind him. The kitchen clock ticked loud after he was gone. I sat at the table with my coffee going cold, staring at the lemon print towel hanging from the oven. It looked cheerful. It didn't fit the room anymore. I picked up my phone, scrolled to the voicemail again, and listened for the third time to that bright young voice. I didn't need her name to know what kind of woman she was, the kind who laughs through lies and calls it ambition. Once the wire hits, Lucas will draft the separation papers, capacity clause, easier than you think, love you. Those words turned over in my mind until they became shapes. Capacity clause meant only one thing, they were going to paint me as incapable. Senile, confused, a sweet old woman who didn't know what she was signing. And moving title, that meant they were coming for my house. The one Frank and I paid off 40 years ago with pennies and patience. I stood and went straight to the hall closet. The little safe waited behind the broom. Inside, the deed, the certificates, and the envelope my late husband left me labeled Ruth, just in case. I took it all out and spread it on the dining table. Frank's handwriting stared back at me. I could almost hear his voice, don't let anyone take what we worked for, Ruthie. Not anyone. I made a list, just like we used to when bills were tight. Call Ellen. Call the bank. Copy the voicemail. Find a lawyer. When I called my sister Ellen, she answered on the second ring. She's 2 years younger but sharper, like she's been waiting her whole life to tell me I told you so. What's wrong? She said before I even spoke. Thomas, I said. He's been planning something with another woman. They called me by mistake. Silence. Then softly, oh Ruth. I told her everything. The investment, the talk of transferring my inheritance, the voicemail about separation papers and capacity clauses. Capacity clause? She repeated, outraged. You're 78, not senile. I suppose to them it doesn't matter, I said. They just need a few signatures and a story. She was quiet for a moment, then said, you need to call a lawyer today. Do not wait. I don't know who to trust. Use my neighbor's daughter, Rachel Pierce. She's an attorney in town. Smart as a whip, handles estate issues. I'll text you her number. When Thomas returned that evening, I had already spoken to Rachel's secretary and made an appointment for the next morning. He breezed through the door with flowers, daisies, the grocery store kind. Thought we could start fresh, he said, placing them in a glass. I've been thinking about retirement, you know. Maybe Florida? Just you and me. He said it so easily, I might have believed him if I hadn't heard his girlfriend plotting over the phone. Florida sounds lovely, I said. But I think I'd like to see the paperwork on that investment first. You mentioned something about Lucas. His face flickered. Just for a second. Paperwork, he echoed. You don't need to worry about that. It's technical. I'll explain when it's done. Humor me, I said. I like to understand what my money is doing. He gave a little laugh, patting my shoulder. You always were cautious, Ruth. That's why I handle these things. You'd get lost in the numbers. That stung more than it should have. Lost. That's what he wanted me to look like. Lost, forgetful, dependent. He changed the subject quickly. Dinner. I nodded, pretending to relax. But while he cooked, I slipped into the office and photographed every bank statement and every document he'd left on the desk. Some of the files had strange names, LLC_Hartfield, Joint Transfer Formed PDF. I sent them to my email, then deleted the sent history. At Rachel's office the next morning, I sat across from a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and calm hands. Tell me everything, she said. I did. I showed her the voicemail, the photos, the list. Rachel's mouth tightened. This is a classic play, she said. They'll try to get you to sign a power of attorney or a transfer document. The capacity angle means they're planning to file a statement later claiming you didn't know what you were signing, which lets them take assets without consent. And the woman on the phone? I asked. She's likely part of it, maybe a paralegal helping Lucas. Maybe more. You said she mentioned separation papers. That means he's already planning to cut you out once he controls the funds. I felt my stomach twist. What do I do? Rachel leaned forward. We stay calm. We make copies of everything. We notify your bank immediately to freeze any large transfers. And we don't confront him yet. If he feels cornered, he'll move faster. Let him think you're still quiet. Her tone reminded me of how I used to speak to my third graders before a spelling test, gentle but firm. It gave me strength. I followed her advice to the letter. That afternoon, I went to the bank and met with the branch manager, a young man named Kyle who looked like he was used to people underestimating him. I explained the situation, and he listened carefully. Mrs. Hart, he said, we can place an alert requiring in-person verification for any wire or withdrawal over $500. No one but you with ID can authorize changes. Do it, I said. He typed fast, then asked quietly, do you want to set a code phrase for future calls? I smiled. Lemon towel. He blinked. Pardon. Something I'll remember, I said. It's perfect. He smiled and typed it in. When I got home, Thomas was in the garden, trimming the hedge that never needed trimming. Where'd you go? He asked, too casually. Just errands, I said. Good, he murmured, pretending to be disinterested. But his eyes flicked to my purse. He was looking for papers. That night he tried again, soft voice, hand on mine, you know I'd never do anything to hurt you, right? I looked him straight in the eye. That depends what you call hurt. His smile faltered. Don't start. I'm not starting, I said. I'm remembering. He left the room muttering something about making things harder than they need to be. And I thought, good. Let it be hard. The next morning, I heard him on the phone in the garage. He thought I was asleep, but the window was open. She's hesitating, he said. If she doesn't sign, we can file under incapacity. Reeves said the doctor's note about her anxiety meds will help. Yes. Friday. We'll do it Friday. That was the first time I felt cold all the way through. Anxiety meds, he meant the small prescription Dr. Lane gave me after Frank died, just to help me sleep. He was going to use that against me. I pressed record on my phone and caught every word. When he came in later with that same false brightness, I was ready. Big day tomorrow, he said. Lucas is coming by with the paperwork. Just sign and we can celebrate. Tomorrow. I said. So soon. No sense delaying, he said. It's just a formality. I'll make coffee, I said. Wouldn't want to keep anyone waiting. He smiled, relieved, thinking he'd won. But by then, I had sent the recording to Rachel, and she had replied with 2 words, let him try. That night, I walked through the house slowly. Every lamp, every photo, every small thing that carried a memory. I touched Frank's old jacket hanging by the door. "I'll fix it, Frank," I whispered. "I'll fix what he broke." Then I wrote one more thing on my list, number 7. Record everything. Don't flinch. When I finally went to bed, I dreamed not of fear but of fire, quiet, steady blue fire. The kind that doesn't roar but burns until there's nothing left to hide. Tomorrow, he'd bring his partner and his fake papers. Tomorrow, he'd find out I wasn't the confused woman he imagined. Keep watching, because when he put those documents on the table, I didn't panic. I smiled. And then I turned the tables in a way he never saw coming. Rachel liked to say that panic is just energy without a task. So she gave me tasks until my hands stopped shaking and started moving. I copied the voicemail to 3 places: my phone, a thumb drive, and a little cloud folder she set up in my name. I wrote each password twice on a folded index card and slid the card under the lining of my purse. I put fresh batteries in my old tape recorder and practiced turning it on with one finger so I wouldn't fumble. I made a list with lines between each step like train tracks: bank, recorder's office, doctor's letter, witnesses, calendar. Every time Thomas crossed a line, I drew a firmer one. We began at the bank because money is the lever for everything else. Kyle, the young manager with the careful eyes, walked me through a second layer of protection. No wires, no transfers, and no account changes without you in person, with ID and a code phrase, he said. I gave him the same 2 words as before. Lemon towel. He smiled, typed, and asked if I wanted text alerts for every attempt. I did. He set them to ping both my phone and Ellen's. From there we went to the recorder's office. The clerk's counter was high enough to make a person feel small. I squared my shoulders and stood on my good foot. Rachel introduced herself by last name the way lawyers do and explained that I needed a property monitor. The clerk nodded like this wasn't the first time she'd heard a story like mine and set up a watch to email Rachel and me if anyone recorded, attempted to record, or even pulled a draft document on my parcel. She wrote my parcel number on a sticky note in big black looping numbers so I could see it without my glasses. I folded that note in with Frank's deed and slid them both into a clear sleeve in my binder. Now the doctor, Rachel said gently, steering me toward the elevator. We need the opposite of what they plan to wave around. Dr. Lane was waiting because Rachel had called ahead. He is gentle about everything except nonsense. He listened while I explained what I suspected. He nodded, rolled his chair to the computer, and printed a letter on his letterhead. Ruth Hart is fully oriented to person, place, and time. Ruth Hart manages her own medications and finances. Ruth Hart has no cognitive impairment diagnosis. At the bottom he wrote, in his neat doctor's script, no recommendations for guardianship or conservatorship. I watched that last sentence dry and felt my breath even out. He made 2 copies and signed them all. Keep one on you, he said. Keep one with your lawyer. If anyone asks you to sign anything you don't understand, you call me first. On the way home, Rachel asked if I felt up to one more stop. Just one, she said. I want to take the wind out of their sails before they even get the boat in the water. She drove us to a notary she trusts above a tax office. The woman there took my ID, watched me sign a simple statement: I do not authorize any power of attorney, quitclaim deed, or transfer of title without my lawyer present, and stamped it with a fresh, valid seal. Rachel slipped the notarized page into her briefcase like a card she couldn't wait to play. Back at the house, I made tea like it was a sacrament and sat at the table while Rachel drew a quick map on a yellow pad. We're going to let him believe tomorrow is his day, she said. If he brings paperwork, we don't refuse, we say we'll look. We don't argue law, we ask questions that get him talking. We record. And if he tries to push anything through while he sits in your kitchen, Kyle will call me, because we put a flag on your accounts that pings my number and the bank's fraud desk. Won't he get suspicious when I don't fuss? I asked. Let him get suspicious, she said. Suspicious people talk. Talking people make mistakes. I slept light and woke before the sun. The house had that early hush that used to make me think of field trips when I was a teacher. Paper sacks, permission slips, a line of little bodies to shepherd. This time the line was my own actions. Turn the recorder on, set the extra phone on the mantel, slide my binder to the end of the table where my hand can reach it without looking. I put the lemon towel on the oven bar like a flag and set 3 mugs out, one for me, one for Thomas, one for the man he called Lucas. If a person plans to take what's yours, there is power in making them drink your coffee first. Ellen arrived at 8:30 with a pie tin she didn't put pie in and a casserole dish that didn't smell like food. Under the foil, she had tucked a copy of Frank's deed, my driver's license, Dr. Lane's letter, a cheap phone that records calls, and a notepad. She put the tin in the oven and whispered, "If you need an excuse to leave the table, pull this out and give it a sniff." We laughed, which helped. At 9 sharp the front door opened without a knock. Thomas swept in first in his navy blazer, tie loose like he was playing at being relaxed. A man followed him, 40 maybe tall, a little too tan for September, carrying a leather folio. "Ruth," Thomas said with that bright voice he uses on strangers, "this is Lucas." "Lucas, this is my wife." Lucas took my hand like my hand was a contract. "Pleasure," he said, and he meant the word to sound big. "Coffee," I said, and watched them both sit where I wanted them, Thomas with his back to the hallway, Lucas with the light behind him so he would squint a little and maybe miss some tells. I set my binder near my left elbow and the tape recorder under the edge of the placemat. I asked Lucas where he grew up. "Dallas," he said, automatically. "Funny," I said lightly. "Thomas told me you were Arizona born and bred. We love Sedona." I smiled like a woman making small talk and turned the recorder on with my little finger. Lucas didn't falter. "We move around," he said. "It's a mobile business." "What business is that?" I asked. "Distribution logistics," he said. "We're picking up a center, we're in talks." "With who?" I asked. He named a company I didn't recognize and glanced at Thomas like I should stop asking questions. Thomas cleared his throat. "Ruth," he said, the edge creeping in, "we've gone over this. She doesn't need the boring stuff. Give her the simple sheet." Lucas slid a single page across the table, not the stack I expected. At the top, in big letters, it said Limited Partner Acknowledgement. At the bottom, a line for my name. When I didn't reach for the pen, Lucas smiled, slow and practiced. "This just confirms you're on board," he said. "The rest moves faster after this." "What does limited mean?" I asked. "It means your upside is capped but your risk is not," Ellen said from the doorway before I could say come in. She carried a plate with 2 plain cookies on it like a waitress at a luncheon. She put it in front of Lucas and added, "Sweet as tea, I used to do books for a feed store. We saw a lot of limited partners who ended up with unlimited trouble." Thomas's eyes flashed. "Ellen," he said tightly, "this is private." "Then you should have closed the door," she said, and leaned her hip against the counter like she had all day. Lucas tried charm. "Ma'am, this is a great opportunity. Your sister will be looked after." "My sister looks after herself," Ellen said. I turned the page slowly, reading every word like I was 20 years in the classroom teaching the word skim, and refusing to do it. Halfway down, I found a clause that made my mouth go dry. "What does attorney in fact mean here?" I asked, keeping my voice level. Lucas didn't blink. "It just lets Thomas sign for you if you're busy." "If I'm busy," I repeated, and felt the first shimmer of heat in my chest. I slid the page back without signing. "Busy isn't a diagnosis," I said. "You said Thomas could sign for me if I'm incapacitated. That's what this is." Thomas took a breath like he was about to deliver a benediction and then set the pen on the page. "Ruth," he said, "this is why I found someone who listens. You make everything so," he looked for the word, "so sticky." I let him hear his own echo. "Sticky," I said, and folded my hands. "I'd like to see the full packet. I don't sign summaries." Lucas's smile cooled a degree. He reached into his folio and pulled a thicker stack, set it between us without moving his hand away. "This is time sensitive," he said. "If we don't get it to the office by noon, the window closes." Ellen coughed once, which was our signal. I stood, walked to the oven, and pulled out the empty pie tin with 2 pot holders, checking it like something might be in there. "I don't like to rush the important things," I said over my shoulder. When I sat back down, my phone buzzed on the table. I had set the alerts to silent, but a little banner rolled across the top of the screen where only I could read it. "Fraud alert, attempted online access blocked, checking." A second later, another, "Fraud alert, wire attempt, denied, over $500 limit." I didn't move, I let my face stay the same. Rachel had asked Kyle to send those to her phone too. Somewhere across town, a lawyer was already dialing a banker. Lucas pushed the stack closer. Initial here, here, and here, he said, tapping the corners. I didn't pick up the pen. I pointed to a page near the back where a notary block sat waiting, blank. Who is your notary? I asked. I like to know names. Lucas flipped ahead, a little too fast for a man without nerves. We'll handle that at the office, he said. We have a girl who stamps. A girl who stamps, Ellen said, and snorted once the way our mother used to when a salesman came to the porch with a surefire vacuum. My father called that a rubber stamp. Courts call it something else. Thomas leaned forward until his tie hit the table. Stop stalling, he hissed, the smile dropping all the way off. You always do this. You build walls out of questions. I build fences, I said, to keep what's mine safe. I slid the stack back an inch. Before I sign anything, I want a meeting with your partners. All of them. And copies for my attorney. Lucas's eyes flickered again at that word, the one that pricks men who prefer back rooms. No need to complicate this, he said. We can keep it in the family. I thought about the woman who called me by mistake and said love you at the end of a sentence about paper. Family can be a very elastic word. Thomas stood suddenly, chair legs scraping the floor. I knew this would be ugly, he said. She can't help herself. He pulled his phone, held it up like a shield, and said to Lucas, call Reeves. Tell her to have the emergency petition ready if Ruth refuses. We'll file this afternoon. Everything in me went very still then, like a lake right before it ices. I had expected tomorrow. I had not expected, file this afternoon. I kept my hands where they were and my voice level. Emergency petition for what? For interim guardianship, Lucas said smoothly, too quickly to have invented it on the spot. Temporary. Just a formality. So temporary you tried to move my title last week, I said. He blinked. Ellen smiled without humor. Thomas swore under his breath. And then the house phone rang, the old landline I keep for storms and telemarketers. Let it go, Thomas said, the kind of command that used to send me to casseroles and chores. I let it ring twice and picked it up on the third because a ringing phone is sometimes a rope thrown from another boat. Hart residence, I said. Mrs. Hart? A woman asked, too practiced to be a wrong number. This is Kelsey with County Calendar. I'm calling to confirm your appearance tomorrow at 4 p.m. for the emergency guardianship review. Petition filed by, one moment. Thomas Hart. We usually ensure both parties received notice. I looked at the men at my table and did not let my face move even a hair. Thank you, I said calmly. I have received notice. I set the handset down so slowly the bass barely clicked. Rachel had said let him show his hand. He'd slid all his cards across the wood. Lucas recovered first. Don't dramatize this, he said. It's just scheduling. It's easier to cancel than to create a slot. He said it in the same voice you use to settle a child before a shot. Show me the petition, I said. We don't have to, Thomas snapped. You will, I said. I reached into my binder and pulled out Dr. Lane's letter and the notarized statement, laid them side by side on the table like bread and wine. Read these aloud, Thomas. Let Lucas listen carefully. He didn't pick them up. He stared at the doctor's seal like it was a stain. I watched something pass across his face that I had not seen since the first year we were married, when he told a neighbor he'd forgotten to return a borrowed ladder and then realized he'd been seen using it the next day. He used to be bad at lying. He had gotten too much practice. My phone buzzed again. A text from Rachel, at clerk's office. Someone filed a petition at 8:42 a.m. today. Copy in hand. Heading there now. I folded my hands to keep them from shaking and thought of every student who ever looked at me with a paper they did not write. I let the silence get long enough to be useful. Lucas stood, gathering his folio, deciding flight was better than the fight he was losing. We'll be in touch, he said, which is what men say when they plan to go to a different door. You'll go to court, Ellen said brightly, and we'll be there first. They reached the door, and I thought it was over, but it wasn't, not yet. Thomas turned back, anger finally naked on his face, and said low and mean, You've made a mess of this, Ruth. You should have signed. You'll wish you had. I did not stand. I did not shout. I said very quietly, Every threat is on tape. He looked at the placemat, finally seeing what he should have seen an hour ago. After they left, the quiet felt different. Not the quiet of being alone and small, but the quiet of a room after a storm goes past and you can hear what's left standing. Ellen squeezed my shoulder once and then started washing mugs like it was a normal Tuesday. Rachel pulled into the driveway not 15 minutes later. She came in with a manila envelope and a face I now knew meant good news for us, bad news for them. They filed, she said, sliding the copy onto the table. Emergency guardianship petition. It's sloppier than I expected. They leaned hard on your confusion and the anti-anxiety prescription from 5 years ago. They attached a letter from a clinic I've never heard of, with your doctor's name spelled wrong and a signature that looks traced. I stared at the page where my life was described like a case study in weakness. Can they win with this? I asked. With the judge we drew? Rachel said. Not if the truth gets the first word. We'll file our objection today with Dr. Lane's letter, your notarized statement, and the recordings. I'll ask for sanctions for filing in bad faith. And, she tapped the last page. They included a proposed order transferring temporary management of your accounts to Thomas. It names their notary, L. Reeves. I did a quick check. Her commission expired 2 years ago. I took the document and looked at the notary block. The stamp was clear, the expiration date even clearer, 2023. It was 2025. Somewhere, a woman who said love you after talking about moving my title had stamped a future she did not legally own. Before I could speak, my email chimed on the kitchen tablet with a sound I hadn't heard in years. I tapped the screen. A message sat on top of my inbox from a sender I didn't know, Reeves, L., like a fly landing right on the pie. The subject line read, Draft, Emergency Packet for TH. The first line of the email preview took the breath right out of my chest, resending with the corrected notice, accidentally used her personal email last time. I opened it. Attachments bloomed like weeds. In the CC line, by some mercy or mistake, my address sat next to Thomas's and Lucas's. Rachel leaned over my shoulder, eyebrows climbing. She sent you the whole thing by accident, she whispered. Every draft. Every plan. Every lie. I scrolled down and saw it, a copied and pasted capacity narrative they'd written about me, complete with bullet points, confused at church, overwhelmed by online bills, misplaces keys, and 3 names of witnesses they planned to list. One of the names made my stomach flip. They had put down Mrs. Harris from across the fence. The other 2 were worse, Pastor Green and, God help me, Ellen, with a note that said likely sympathetic if approached by Thomas first. I looked up at my sister. Her mouth had gone thin as thread. They think I'd vouch, she said, voice hot with insult. They don't know me at all. Rachel's phone buzzed. She checked it, nodded once, and said, the clerk just docketed a hearing for tomorrow at 4. This email makes our job simple. We don't just defend. We go on offense. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt a new kind of anger, bright and exact. They had not just planned to take my money. They had written a little story about me and tried to hand it to a judge, hoping no one would fact-check the ending. Print everything, I said. We take 3 sets. Rachel was already at the printer. Ellen was already at the sink, rinsing mugs for the walk to the car like we had somewhere to be. My phone buzzed again, another attempt blocked on the account, this one for a new login name I didn't recognize. Kyle texted 2 words after it, all blocked. I took the manila envelope from Rachel and slid the drafts inside with a steady hand. I looked at Frank's photo on the wall, the one where he is 25 and standing in front of our first car with his hand over his eyes like he's searching for weather. Found it, I told him under my breath. Found the storm. We had the hearing time. We had the doctor's letter. We had the notarized statement, the call recordings, and now, by the grace of someone's clumsy thumb, their plan in their own words with a notary stamp 2 years past dead. I closed my binder and felt the weight of it change. It wasn't just paper anymore. It was proof. I was halfway to the door when the landline rang again. Ellen reached for it, but I lifted a finger. Let me, I said. I picked it up and pressed it to my ear. Hart Residence. A man cleared his throat on the other end, professional, cool. Mrs. Hart, this is Judge Nolan's clerk. We've received an emergency request to move up the guardianship hearing to today at 3. Opposing counsel claims you may transfer assets before 4. Can you be here by 2:30? I looked at Rachel. She mouthed, "Say yes." I said yes. He gave directions. I wrote them down. When I hung up, Rachel was already packing her bag and Ellen was already at the door with my coat, even though the day was warm. We stepped onto the porch and the sun hit the lemon towel through the kitchen window just so, turning the border bright. I reached back, flipped the lock, and felt the tick of the key in my hand like a clock starting. They wanted a rush. They would get one. And if they thought moving the hearing up would keep me from walking into that room first, binder in hand and their email hot off my printer, they had forgotten the most important thing about a woman my age. We don't waste steps. I closed the door behind us and headed for the courthouse, where someone else's story about me was waiting on a judge's desk, and my first word was about to cut it clean in half. The courthouse smelled faintly of polish and paper, like the inside of a library that had forgotten laughter. The ceilings were too high for whispers, and every sound felt like it was being judged. Ellen walked beside me with her shoulders squared and her chin tilted up, the same way she used to walk me to the principal's office when I was little. Rachel was already there when we arrived, standing near the clerk's window, a neat stack of folders in her arms. Her face was calm but her eyes had that brightness I'd come to recognize, the look of someone about to spring a trap. "They filed in bad faith," she said quietly, handing me a pen to sign the appearance sheet. "We'll show that first. Then we'll show intent, emails, drafts, everything. The judge has a reputation for cutting through noise." I nodded and took a slow breath. My heart was drumming like a clock that had picked up speed, but I kept my hands steady. Frank used to say that nerves are just proof you care about the outcome. Thomas was already sitting at the opposite table when we entered the small courtroom. He didn't look at me right away. He was whispering to Lucas and to a woman with her hair pulled into a tight bun, the notary, I guessed. When he finally looked up, his expression landed somewhere between concern and contempt. He had always been good at pretending the two were the same. Judge Nolan entered without announcement, a tall man with silver hair and a tired smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Let's keep this efficient," he said, glancing at the docket. "Petition for emergency guardianship, filed by Mr. Thomas Hart on behalf of his spouse, Mrs. Ruth Hart. All present." Rachel spoke first. "Yes, Your Honor. I represent Mrs. Hart. We've also filed a motion to dismiss the petition with prejudice on grounds of fraud and bad faith." That got the judge's attention. "Fraud?" he repeated, setting his glasses down. "That's a strong claim, Counselor." "Yes, Your Honor," Rachel said evenly. "And we can substantiate it." Thomas cleared his throat and stood, smoothing his tie like a nervous salesman. "Your Honor, my wife has become confused, forgetful. She's been mismanaging finances, talking to strangers online about money, giving away information. I filed this petition only to protect her." He said it so smoothly that for a second, I almost forgot the months of deceit. He spoke like he'd practiced it in the mirror, every syllable a plea for sympathy. But then he made the mistake of looking at me, just long enough for me to see that flicker of satisfaction, the one that always followed a lie that landed well. Rachel waited until he sat down before she rose. "Mrs. Hart," she said gently, "would you like to address the court?" I stood, slowly but firmly. "Your Honor, I'm not confused. I'm cautious. There's a difference. I've managed our finances since 1978. My husband only started helping after my late husband's inheritance cleared last year." Thomas shifted in his seat, eyes narrowing. "That's not true." The judge held up a hand. "You'll get your turn, sir." I placed my binder on the table, opened it to the first section, and slid the doctor's letter forward. "Exhibit A," Rachel said smoothly, handing a copy to the clerk. "From Dr. Samuel Lane, Mrs. Hart's primary care physician of 10 years. He affirms that my client is fully competent and capable of managing her affairs." Judge Nolan glanced at the page, nodded once. "Duly noted." Rachel flipped another divider. "Exhibit B, a notarized statement signed 2 weeks ago, declaring Mrs. Hart does not authorize any power of attorney, title transfer, or financial transaction without counsel present." Lucas leaned forward, whispering to Thomas. The judge noticed. "Mr. Hart, something you'd like to share?" he asked. Thomas smiled tightly. "Just clarifying details, Your Honor. My wife sometimes signs things she doesn't remember. Rachel's lips curved. Then you'll recall this next part, she said, holding up a printed email. This message was sent from the notary's account this morning, copied accidentally to Mrs. Hart. It contains full drafts of your so-called emergency petition, including an attached capacity narrative describing Mrs. Hart as confused, unfit, and likely to misplace important papers. The draft lists 3 supposed witnesses, one of whom, she turned slightly, is sitting right here. Ellen stood from the gallery like a fuse had been lit. They used my name, she said to the judge. Without asking. Without even talking to me. The judge's brow furrowed. Did you, in fact, give any statement about your sister's capacity? No, Ellen said sharply. And I'll swear to that right now if you want. Rachel continued, the same email includes a notarized document stamped by Ms. Reeves, whose commission expired in 2023. The petition was filed this morning with that same invalid seal. We've included certified copies of the notary database to confirm. The courtroom went still. Even the air conditioning seemed to hush. Rachel slid another page across the table to the judge. Exhibit C. Their forged notary certification. Judge Nolan examined it for a long moment, then looked directly at the woman with the tight bun. Ms. Reeves, care to explain why you're using an expired commission? Her lips trembled. I didn't realize. Spare me, the judge said curtly. You swore an oath when you were commissioned. You knew your expiration date. Lucas cleared his throat, trying to recover the tone. Your Honor, this is all procedural. The intent was protection, not harm. Rachel didn't let him finish. Protection, Mr. Lucas? Because we also have recordings, made legally, in Mrs. Hart's own home, of Mr. Hart discussing with you the plan to transfer her property title and her accounts under the claim of incapacity. Would you like me to play them aloud? Thomas shot up. That's private conversation. Between 2 conspirators, Your Honor, Rachel said calmly. Not between spouses. The call was made on speaker, in her home. And it directly references their intent to file this petition before noon today, which they did. Judge Nolan's gavel struck once. Sit down, Mr. Hart. He did, red creeping up his neck. His voice was lower now, tight with anger. She's turning this into a show. Only because you gave her the script, I said quietly. The judge looked at me for a long moment, then leaned forward. Mrs. Hart, did you bring copies of these recordings? Yes, Your Honor, I said, sliding the thumb drive across the table. I also brought the email chain and my bank's fraud alerts from the past 2 days, each showing attempted wire transfers under my name. Rachel added, we've confirmed those IP addresses trace back to Mr. Hart's device, through his shared login with Mr. Lucas's firm. The judge's pen tapped twice against the bench. And you're prepared to submit all of this into the record? Yes, Your Honor, Rachel said. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he sighed, sat back, and turned to Thomas. Mr. Hart, this petition is hereby dismissed with prejudice. You are ordered to refrain from initiating any further financial actions involving your spouse's property or accounts. Furthermore, based on the evidence presented, I am referring this matter to the district attorney for potential criminal investigation into fraud and document falsification. Do you understand? Thomas looked like someone had replaced the air in his lungs with sand. You can't, she's twisting everything. I can, the judge said sharply. And I just did. You may consider yourself very fortunate I'm not remanding you today. He turned to me, his expression softening slightly. Mrs. Hart, I'm sorry you had to go through this. I suggest you update all your security measures and consult with your attorney about a protective order. I nodded, my throat tight. Thank you, Your Honor. The gavel came down again. Case dismissed. It was done. Just like that. The moment the sound echoed, something inside me finally loosened, like a knot untying after too many years. Rachel touched my arm whispering, you handled that perfectly. Ellen let out a long, shaky laugh, the kind that comes from exhaustion more than joy. Thomas stayed seated for a long time, staring at the table, refusing to meet my eyes. When he finally stood, it was with the stiffness of a man who'd run out of lies. He turned toward me, his voice low and bitter. You think you've won something? I met his gaze. Not something, I said. Myself. He started to speak again, but the bailiff stepped closer, and Thomas stopped. Lucas guided him out, hand on his shoulder, both of them walking faster than they needed to. When they were gone, the judge had already moved to the next case, his voice echoing faintly down the hallway as we stepped out into the bright corridor. The light felt too clean after the dim courtroom. Rachel handed me the official dismissal copy, embossed and crisp. Outside, the air smelled of rain on hot pavement. We stood under the courthouse awning while the sky cracked open above us. Ellen opened her umbrella and looked at me. "You okay?" I nodded. "Better than I've been in years." Rachel smiled. "He'll have to answer for all of it now. And that email ensures they can't claim ignorance. You were remarkable in there." "I just told the truth," I said. "The difference is this time, someone believed it." Ellen laughed softly, looping her arm through mine. "Let's get you home before you melt." As we walked to the car, I looked back once at the courthouse doors. For years, I'd thought strength meant staying quiet, keeping peace no matter the cost. But peace built on silence is just another kind of trap. Now the only sound was rain and the faint distant hum of thunder rolling out over the hills, like the sky itself was exhaling the truth at last. And in that moment, I decided the next chapter of my life would not begin with what Thomas did to me. It would begin with what I still had the power to do. Because when a storm ends, the air doesn't forget. It clears. And everything left standing looks brand new. The morning after the hearing, I woke to the kind of quiet that didn't feel empty, it felt earned. The rain had rinsed the world clean overnight, and sunlight cut across my kitchen table in long warm stripes. I brewed coffee slowly, the way Frank used to, letting it fill the house with that smell of home and steadiness. For the first time in months, I didn't check my phone for alerts. I didn't need to. The banks were locked down, the petition dismissed, and the people who tried to strip me of my name and mind were now answering to the law. Ellen came by before noon, holding a small box of donuts and a grin that made her look 20 years younger. "You sleep?" she asked. "Like a baby," I said, and laughed. "A baby with a lawyer." She sat across from me, breaking a donut in half. Rachel called. "The DA's office is already reviewing the case. Lucas might lose his license. Thomas is in a panic, blaming everyone but himself." I stirred my coffee. "He'll find out soon enough that every lie has a paper trail. I used to tell my students the same thing about homework: if you didn't do the work, the truth will show." Ellen smiled. "You always were the teacher, even in battle." I looked out the window where the lemon towel fluttered faintly in the breeze. I thought I was too old to start over. Turns out, starting over just means deciding you're not finished. Later that day, Rachel came by with a folder and a hug. She handed me copies of the judge's order, now stamped and sealed. "You're in the clear, Ruth," she said. "The DA's office has subpoenaed their emails. With the fake notary and forged documents, there's a solid case for fraud and attempted exploitation." I took the papers, feeling the weight of them, the kind of weight that comes from proof, from being believed. "I don't hate him," I said quietly. "I just finally see him for who he is." Rachel nodded. "That's freedom." After she left, I sat on the porch with Ellen and watched the afternoon stretch across the yard. The air smelled like wet grass and possibility. My phone buzzed once, a blocked number. I didn't answer. Some silences are better left intact. Instead, I opened the envelope Frank had left for me years ago, the one I'd been too afraid to read until now. Inside was a single note, his handwriting steady and familiar. "If you're reading this, it means you had to be strong again. You always were, Ruthie. Don't let the world make you small. Build something new from the ashes." I folded it carefully and set it beside my coffee. The truth was, I already had. By evening, Ellen was dozing in the chair, the sun slipping behind the trees. I stood, walked to the door, and looked out at the long driveway. The same one Thomas used to walk up, shoulders back like he owned it. Now it was mine again, quiet, safe, and waiting. Tomorrow, I'd change the locks and sell the old car he'd left behind. Maybe I'd even take a trip, to the ocean, or the mountains. Somewhere that didn't echo with old lies. I closed the door and whispered mostly to myself, "I'm not the woman who needed someone to listen. I'm the woman who finally spoke." And as the house settled around me, The only sound left was the steady tick of the clock and the faint hum of peace, a rhythm I'd almost forgotten but now would never lose again. Because when someone tries to take your life apart piece by piece, the greatest revenge isn't shouting back. It's rebuilding it in silence, stronger than before. And I did.